Hello and welcome to the Heat Check Podcast, Miami Herald's Miami Heat Podcast. I'm David Wilson, and I'm joined, as always, on the other line by Anthony Chiang, our Heat writer at the Herald. Anthony, what's going on?
Did you know that Max Strus hit a three-pointer that was overturned? Did you hear about that story?
I did hear about that.
Yeah. How are you,
I
David?
heard about a lot over the last couple of weeks. We are recording a couple days after the Heat season ended in dramatic fashion, I guess is one way to put it. One of the strangest conference finals series I can remember. For a long time, it was like the worst 7-game series of all time. And then it suddenly, for the last 2 games, became an epic. It was a legitimate epic. Obviously, the Heat comes up short. That Max Strus overturned three, certainly part of it. Tyler Hero and PJ Tucker injuries, certainly part of it. The Heat's sudden collective failure to shoot a three-pointer is certainly part of it. And weirdly, a lot of the issues I think we expected for the Heat at the start of the season kind of reared their head after, we talked about the depth so much early in the year. Eventually, the Heat just kind of ran out of bodies. We talked about the age concern with guys like Kyle Lowry and Jimmy Butler, and at various points in this series, those guys looked very old. So a lot of the concerns that we had early in the year and kind of vanished throughout the year reared their head in the end. Obviously, the Heat, it was kind of interesting to talk to the Heat after the game, and obviously you talked to them yesterday. It was like definitely kind of a feeling of like, oh man, we should have won this series, could have won this series, but it was also like, it doesn't feel like there was like deep regret. It was like kind of they left it all out there. The Celtics in the end were better, healthier than them in the moments where it really mattered. We'll talk about all that, but first, I feel like we just kind of need to appreciate that series and the way, like I said, obviously, other than game 3, which was the weird Jimmy Butler gets hurt, he'd hang on for dear life down the stretch to win in Boston. Other than that game, which was weird in its own ways, the first 5 games of the series were all pretty much duds. And then over the weekend, we get Jimmy Butler on Thursday channeling 2012 LeBron James and going for 47 to keep the Heat alive. And then on Sunday, probably not quite as much of an epic, but obviously it comes down to Jimmy Butler gets a chance to win it at the buzzer after what would have probably been the craziest comeback in NBA playoff history down the stretch. So first of all, I'm just thankful we got some good games to finish this out. And that is, we almost got an all-timer in game 7.
Yeah, I think this is like one of the rare times a team gets eliminated and like nobody's killing them, right? It's almost like, congrats, like that was a great season. You guys left it all out there. You tried as hard as you could. It came down to one shot. You missed it. Season over. It is what it is, right? Obviously the Heat are disappointed that, they were so close. Anytime you're that close to getting to the finals and you fall short after all that you put into it, it's tough. I mean, it sucks, like, for lack of a better term. And like, you could tell guys are really disappointed, but at the same time, I think they know they were so close. They know that Boston was hurt too, but who knows if Tyler Hero's healthy for most of that
Tucker
series.
Can play the second half.
If PJ Tucker can play the second half, if Jimmy doesn't run into that knee injury and he, turn in 2 of his worst playoff games in recent history, and where he barely could move in games 4 and 5. If he plays better, maybe they win one of those games, right? So, it's almost like, there were so many things working against the Heat. It still came down to one shot. It just didn't go in. And the Heat move on, but I think, they didn't accomplish their overall goal, but they definitely exceeded expectations. I mean, when you consider where we thought they would be before the season, where we thought Brooklyn, Milwaukee, Philly, even Atlanta might be better than the Heat, and they finished as the second best team in the East, one shot away from advancing to the finals. It was, in my eyes, I don't think you can really have any complaints. It was a successful season. And to me, it's just even amazing. It's incredible that they're even that close when they shot 30% on threes in the series.
Right.
Like, I don't even know how, like, that's the weirdest thing to me about this series. If you tell me Heat are shooting 30% in the East Finals, I say they get swept. Probably. But Jimmy was that good.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about Jimmy Butler.
And the defense. Jimmy and the defense.
And the defense, and we'll get to all that. There's like a million different directions we can go to start. I think, what you mentioned where it's like they lost in the conference finals and no one's killing them. I think it is, and I feel like the same thing kind of happens with Jimmy Butler, where like all these other top 10 guys, and that's what Jimmy Butler proved once again that he is. He's a top 10 guy in this league, at least until maybe like Kawhi Leonard and some of these other guys can kind of prove they're still what they were pre their injuries. Most of those guys, if they had 2 games like Jimmy had in games 4 and games 5, I'm going to excuse him in game 3 because he was actually pretty good, if I remember correctly, in the first half. And then
he was okay. It wasn't that great.
Yeah, it wasn't like terrible. It wasn't.
You could tell that he was bothering him, and
yeah, it wasn't like game 4 and game 5 where game 5 he was like non-existent basically. I didn't see game 4, I think, because that was the night the Panthers got eliminated, and I never felt the need to go back and rewatch it.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, but I think it's the fact that, you never feel like Jimmy's like dogging it, right? And that was the kind of the case with this whole team. You never felt like this team guys get, the guys who get killed are the James Hardens, the Ben Simmons, the guys who you can watch a game and you're like, are they even trying hard out there? Like what? Like, or have they been working hard in the offseason? You never get that sense, obviously, with Jimmy Butler above all else, and really with no one on this team. This team really kind of maximized, I think, its ability. And, this obviously this team is different than the team that was in the bubble. The Celtics team is different than the one that was in the bubble. But like, those 2 teams are really even, and they're 1-1 now when they play each other in the playoffs. With their, both teams obviously still the same top 2 guys for the most part, the same cores. They're really even, and sometimes you lose to a team that you're as good as, and sometimes you beat a team you're as good as, and that is the way I think most people feel coming out of this series. I think, obviously Milwaukee is right there, and if Chris Middleton doesn't get hurt, maybe they're the team that's in the finals. But like going into next year, we talked about it so much in the beginning of the season, like where does the Heat fit in that hierarchy, like you said, and I think Milwaukee was kind of viewed as a cut above everyone else. Obviously, you had Boston, you had Philly, you mentioned Atlanta. I mean, to me, it's
Brooklyn,
obviously a lot.
I don't know.
Brooklyn, right? Who knows? Yeah. To me, like Miami, Boston, Milwaukee, those are the teams that right now kind of run the Eastern Conference, and that is what
I agree.
This Heat run proved it. Obviously, Brooklyn is always going to be the wild card asterisk team in there, but these 3 teams, obviously, they're the last 3 representatives for the East in the finals. And have combined to, be in the conference finals at least. Obviously Heat and Celtics have done it twice now. Milwaukee, like I said, did it 2 years ago, and probably maybe would have if Middleton didn't get hurt. Those are the 3 teams that run this conference.
Yeah, I agree. And to your point about the Heat like never dogging it, I mean, to their last breath, they did not give up. They were down 13 with 3:35 left.
Right.
Put together an 11-0 run to get it to 2, half possession. Jimmy, takes that pull-up 3, which I'm fine with. I think that's a fine shot.
That's I guess the next topic. Yeah. It was that 3, but finish what you were saying.
But yeah, so like you can't to me, you just can't criticize them too much. I mean, yeah, there are little things you could nitpick at, but they were right there with everything they went through all season, with all the injuries they faced in the playoffs. Yes, only Tyler Hero was missing in Game 7, but PJ Tucker was obviously dealing with injuries.
Mm-hmm.
Max Strus had the hamstring injury, which he was asked at exit interviews how much that was an issue. Like after the fact, like can you kind of reveal? And he just smiled and said, "I'm fine." But he was dealing with something. He didn't shoot the ball well. Kyle Lowry obviously was dealing with a hamstring injury. I mean, and again, and Jimmy was playing on the knee. So the fact that it was that close, I think, is impressive, honestly, because considering the circumstances, the Heat probably should have lost that series like in 5 games, I think, and how poorly they played offensively as well.
Yeah, I mean, certainly they like kind of no business winning Game 6 the way that we recorded right after Game 5 last week, and we said there was a possibility they could win basically if they shot the lights out, or if Jimmy Butler like suddenly miraculously like stopped looking like he did in the 2 previous games. But we thought there was a pretty slim chance they were getting this series back to Miami. Obviously, whatever happened with Jimmy between Game 5 and Game 6 changed everything, but everyone felt that way. Heat fan, like people are gonna like feel like, oh, everyone counted the Heat out. Heat fans felt that way.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm glad Udonis went at Draymond and not us, because on the podcast we were like, I remember I'm like, this is the end of the road. It's over. I mean, obviously they ended up losing the series, but
Yeah.
I did not think that thing was coming home for Game 7 at all.
Right.
Draymond was not the only one who said that. I would say 99% of the basketball world believed this series was over in 6. So, yeah, the fact that he won that game behind an incredible Jimmy Butler performance, one of the best playoff performances, not only in Heat history,
ever,
but considering the circumstances ever, and the Heat shot over 40%, which is usually, they don't usually, I think they have 2 losses all season when they shoot over 40%. That's usually, they win that game most likely, and then you put together Jimmy's performance. Yeah, they did what they need to do to win on the road. It's just a shame that obviously they couldn't get it done in Game 7. But even coming back for Game 7, I was just like, so much needs to go right.
Right, they were playing with such a slimmer margin.
Yeah.
Then the Celtics was kind of the difference in the series, and everyone, I feel like the prevailing, like the cliche you heard national people talk about all series was the Celtics are the better team, the Heat are the tougher team. Well, toughness is skill. Like that's a skill, that's a strength.
Yeah.
That's Jimmy Butler's greatest skill. Like if you're like, oh, Jimmy Butler's not that good, he's just tough. Like that totally, like you're just missing the entire point there. Right. And that was ultimately kind of what it came down to, though, was like, sure, Jason Tatum is better at shooting jump shots and like making tough. He's not even better at making tough shots than Jimmy Butler. He's better at making jump shots than Jimmy Butler. But like that like ignores what Jimmy Butler is great at. That's being like LeBron. That would be being like Shaq's not good. He's just big. Or Giannis. Right. Giannis got that criticism even last year. He's not good. He's just big. Like that's a skill. That's an ability, and the Heat have that obviously. And you saw it, like you said, right down to the end where we almost got the craziest comeback in NBA playoff history, probably.
And one of the biggest choke jobs on the other side.
Oh,
you imagine, like now everyone's praising the Celtics, but if that 3 goes in, which is out of Boston's control, obviously, because that was an open shot. If that 3 goes in, Jimmy Butler wins the MVP of the Eastern Conference Finals. And Boston's looked at as like one of the biggest, having one of the biggest choke jobs in the entire, playoff history.
Right.
To give away a 13-point lead in the last 3 minutes against an injured team, which almost everybody thought was, the Celtics were better than the Heat, to lose that series like that would have been disastrous. It's just amazing how like one shot.
I know.
It honestly shouldn't, because they had no control over it, but how one shot could just totally flip the narrative.
Yeah, the Celtics, I guess one of the storylines of them all year is they were pretty bad in crunch time. And as soon as Marcus Smart hoisted that 3, I don't know how much time was left on the shot clock.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, the Heat might win this game. And then obviously Jimmy gets a look, and we're 3 days later now. And I kind of still can't believe it didn't go in, considering the way this, like when the ball was in the air, I thought it was going in. Like you said,
would that have been a bigger shot than Ray Allen's 3?
So it easily would have been number 2, right? It's hard to say it would be bigger than Ray Allen's shot. It'd be more stunning than Ray Allen's shot, right? Like when Ray Allen gets the ball there, or that like circumstance, and it's a little bit different. I heard a lot of we obviously, there's been a lot of comparison of the LeBron versus Jimmy Game 6, and they're different because like if LeBron doesn't pull off that incredible Game 6 and the Heat lose, it's an all-time choke job, right? Because considering it's the big 3 and all that, the Celtics in that game, they felt like they were the underdog. It was totally flipped in this series. Jimmy pulls off that game, and all of a sudden the Celtics are in the middle of this choke job, and the Heat are like, they're kind of playing with house money. The Ray Allen shot and that Jimmy shot are kind of similar, right? Where if Ray Allen doesn't make that shot, that's another missed title for the big 3.
Yeah, they might only end with 1 title.
Whereas this was like, if that goes in, it's like unbelievable. But at the same time, when he gets that look, I think everyone in the building, when that's in the air, thinks it's going in.
That's a credit to Jimmy too, because he's not a good 3-point shooter at all.
No, but he's good at that shot. I saw he's like shoots like 40%, I think, on like transition pull-ups like that. He's good at that shot because he only takes it when he's feeling it, right?
Yeah, he rarely takes a pull-up 3 in transition. Right, like that's not what Jimmy does. But he played every second of that game. I have no problem, like I said, going for the win. It was an open shot.
Yeah, I mean, he explained it like he got asked about it, and he said, "I was going for the win." Like it's as simple as that.
Right. I mean, the Heat maybe send it to overtime if he makes that. If he hits a layup, and that's not even given. Al Horford's a great defender and great at contesting at the rim.
It's not like he's getting an open layup, like he's taking a weird hook shot or whatever. Like
right. He's going up against Al Horford 1-on-1. Yeah, I mean, Jimmy could have, finished, but it's not a gimme. So I think the 3 was the right choice in that situation.
Yeah. One, you can't fault it because it's Jimmy Butler and he did everything.
Yes.
For you.
Exactly. He earned that.
Yeah, like if you it felt like by the end of the night, the consensus was like, oh, that kind of made sense when you look at it. I think he took the shot with, what was it, like 17 seconds left, something like that?
16 seconds or something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So, if he makes that 3, obviously the Heat's up 1. Celtics have the pressure now on them. Heat are obviously at that point favored in the game. If he makes a 2 there, Celtics get to hold for the last shot, and like you said, it goes to overtime. Like, best case scenario, it's a 50-50 game, and really the Celtics are favored because they get that last shot. So the math, and obviously Jimmy's not doing all these calculations in his head, but he is thinking like, we are gassed. I've played 48 minutes. Bam has played 46 minutes and 10 seconds.
Kyle's playing on an injured hamstring.
Yeah. We have no PJ Tucker.
Yeah.
We have no Tyler Hero. If I make this shot, we are probably going to win this game because of how good our defense is. If I make a 2, there's no guarantee. And I do not want this to go to overtime. So he's doing that calculation, obviously, in transition. He gets an open look. Al Horford's foot is already in the paint. And we just miss out on like an all-time NBA moment as that shot comes up a little short.
Yeah, I was already like envisioning the still from that shot being plastered onto Championship Alley at FTX Arena, but instead it would just get lost.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of Jimmy's legacy at this point, right? Is like the valiant defeat.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Heat are, like I said, they're going to be contenders here for a little while. But that was I don't know. How do you kind of compare? It's kind of funny how similar this wound up being to the finals. Obviously, the valiant defeat aspect of it, and then just the injuries all around. Obviously, this is around earlier, a little bit lower stakes, all that kind of stuff. Well, when you think of Jimmy Butler, what are you obviously acknowledging that there could win a championship with him here? There could be more runs like this. Like, I don't know, what is the signature Jimmy Butler series at this point? Like, he legitimately has 2 of the, I don't know, 4 or 5 best in Heat history already.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be either that Lakers series or the Celtics,
I mean, it's one of those
or even Philly. I mean, against Philly, he was great too in the second round. He was incredible in that series. I think what Jimmy's proven, even though he hasn't won a championship yet, is he can be the best player on a championship team.
Yeah.
Like, he could. I think that was the big question. Like, with him, like, okay, he's your best player now, right? But is that good enough to win a title, or do you need somebody better than him, and he has to be the number 2? Like, no, Jimmy is good enough to be a number 1 on a championship team. So, I think that's what he's proven a lot over his first 3 years with the Heat. But yeah, the injuries are unfortunate because who knows what the Heat would have done in that final series with a healthy Goran and Bam, right? 2 of your 3 best players in that playoff run. And then this year, who knows what the Heat could have done with a healthy Tyler Hero, who's still probably your best scorer.
Right.
A healthy Kyle Lowry, where he's having to regain his rhythm in the middle of the Eastern Conference Finals.
Kyle Lowry has caught a lot of heat for this series.
Yeah.
And I think some of it is deserved. Like, he does look out of shape, all that kind of stuff. But it's not like the injury play. Like, he was good in the regular season. I feel like people are forgetting that when he was healthy at the start of the year, he looked great. Now, obviously there's, what is he, 36 years old? Like, there's a question. There's a fair question of, is he ever going to be able to be healthy once we get to the conference finals, considering his age and his physique, I guess, for to put it politely. But like, it's not like he just stinks. He was hurt. Yeah,
I think people. I've had this conversation with a lot of people about just, is Kyle Lowry's contract bad? Is it an issue? He didn't live up to expectations. Gabe Vincent should start. Like, he was hurt in the playoffs. In the regular season, he's what you expected him to be.
Right.
I think. Like, did he average 25 points a game? No, but I don't think anybody expected him to do that. He helped make Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo better. He made timely threes. He ran the offense. He was a pretty good, solid defender.
He gave them the transition element they really needed.
Offenses.
Yeah,
I mean, he was hurt. I mean, I think it can be seen as an excuse, but it's a legit explanation for why Kyle Lowry played that way in the playoffs.
And again, he obviously game 6, he was very good, very helpful, I would say.
Yeah.
And even in game 7,
bad start, but he played
did
well
not
in the
like the
second
first
half.
quarter. Although I'll also say he was getting some open looks. They were missing some threes. Like he could have easily had 2 or 3 assists in the first 5 minutes. But he came on down the stretch, getting getting fouled at the end of the first half. I think he had 5 straight points. Definitely had 5 straight. I remember in game 6, maybe had 4. I think at the end of the first half of game 7. So he's still I think a valuable piece. I mean, we'll talk probably more next week about going into the offseason and some of the ways that this team can maybe get better, and what that contract with the Duncan contract will mean. But I mean, if you have faith that Kyle Lowry can stay healthy, then I don't think you can judge him on what he did in the finals and in the playoffs. But at the same time, I think it is a fair argument to wonder, is he ever going to be able to stay healthy at this age with that body type, all that kind of stuff? I mean, we'll see with a full summer now after seeing what it's like to play for the Heat, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, we know the Heat's famous conditioning tests. Like maybe he comes back in way better shape next year. He kind of has to at this point at his age. Point guards a lot of times don't age gracefully.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a really big summer for him. But I'm not writing him off just because of what he did in these finals. I want to quickly, before we wrap up on our finals recap, although we could probably keep going for a lot longer considering what these last 2 games were. I want to go back to game 6. Obviously, a lot of comparisons to the LeBron game. You were not at the LeBron game. Right? Yeah, you were not on the beat yet. Obviously, in college, probably.
I just graduated college, yeah.
Just graduated college. You were obviously in the building for this game 6, though. You, I'm sure, watched that LeBron game 6 very closely as a young Heat fan. So, first of all, what was it like to be in the building for that? I mean, that was legitimately, like you said, one of the all-time great playoff performances. Second most points ever in an elimination game, behind only Wilt Chamberlain. And honestly, any Wilt Chamberlain record does not feel like it really counts.
Be careful.
I mean,
Bob
he's
Cousy
great.
is going to come after you.
Like his numbers are just great. 100 points. Are you kidding?
I know. I'm kidding.
I'm a Wilt guy, but those numbers all look fake. Jimmy did this against the best defense in the league in 2022 on the road, like you said. Obviously, what was it like in the building for that game?
I think everyone was just stunned. It's like we said. I don't think anybody expected the Heat to even be in that game. Everyone, I think that he were 9-point dogs entering game 6 on the road. Like the atmosphere was incredible. I think 30 minutes before the game, even before players took the court, the arena in Boston was full. Everyone was standing up. Everyone was ready to celebrate a Celtics conference championship, their first finals appearance in 12 years, I think. And Jimmy just controlled the game from the start. That's what reminded me most of the LeBron performance. Right. It's just how in control he was of everything. And it almost felt like they're just not losing. They're just not going to lose this game.
We talked about it last week with Jimmy. I think it was maybe it was 2 weeks ago. And the way that I kind of feel like he's going to age gracefully is the way he can just control tempo, all that kind of stuff. And that was a master class of that.
Yeah, it was an epic performance. Definitely Jimmy's probably best playoff performance ever. I think it was his playoff career high in points, but just everything else he did as well, the defense, the steals. And by the way, all this came with the defensive player of the year defending him for most of the game. That's what made it even more impressive. He did this and even in game 7, he did it with Marcus Smart on him. So Jimmy was incredible. And for anybody that's complaining about the extension he signed him to last offseason, yeah, maybe in 4 years when he's making $50 million, it's not going to look great. But the Heat, if that's what he wanted, the Heat kind of had to do it. What are you going to have, another Dwayne Wade situation where you don't give him what he wants and he wants to trade? The Heat, I think he validated it, even though there's still 4 years left on that deal. I think he validated that extension that the Heat decided to sign him to, because he is a max player. He is a top 10 player in the league.
Yeah, I mean, unless he falls off a cliff, they're going to be a contender here for the next couple of years. And, that's the price of doing business is you lock a guy up for longer probably than when it's an aging superstar, longer than they probably will be worth it because you're banking on winning a title in one of those first couple of years. And honestly, I'm probably caught up in the cult of Jimmy right now, but I kind of think they're going to win a championship with him here.
They've been so close.
It's hard to believe that he is not. It's hard to imagine Jimmy Butler finishing his career without a championship. The way that these last, two of the last three playoffs have been, especially these playoffs. I think Bam was obviously a kind of up and down series, but Game 7 I think was you kind of feel as good about Bam as you probably ever have coming off of that Game 7. The way that he again played 46 plus minutes, was the number 2 scorer on the team. I don't have the box score up in front of me.
Yeah, he was number 2. Yeah,
I think second in field goal attempts in that game too. He was kind of all the Bam that we've kind of been pining for. Again, with the acknowledgement that he's never probably going to be like Giannis or whatever. That game was if Bam can give you that. Obviously not the 46 minutes, but kind of the rest of that box score, just on a more consistent basis. I don't think that's asking a ton. And I think between him and Jimmy, and then they got to kind of figure out the Kyle, got to make sure he can stay healthy, stay in shape. You've got a little bit of flexibility to maybe upgrade. Obviously, Tyler Hero is still really valuable and could, that's going to be something we talk about probably next week, is how good can he get? You got that Duncan Robinson contract, which is big, but I don't think unmovable. They've got some paths here to contend for a title, but kind of it doesn't matter as long as you have Jimmy Butler. You're going to be probably in this mix most years.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this more next week. But my initial reaction is most of this team will come back. This team there'll be obviously a few differences around the edges, but I think this core will be back unless everyone's talking about Donovan Mitchell, Zach LaVine, Damian Lillard, Bradley Beal. It's going to take one of those guys demanding a trade for that to become a possibility. That's out of the Heat's control. There's no big name free agent the Heat can get. They don't have cap space.
Yeah,
they're going to be
over the cap. It's a terrible free agent class, actually.
Bad free agent class. Obviously you hope PJ Tucker comes back. He has the player option. He might opt out and try to get more money, more years from the Heat. Caleb Martin isn't, something that the Heat will have to figure out how much they want to pay him. Victor Oladipo, they have his bird rights, so they could pay Victor Oladipo whatever they want, but how much are the Heat willing to go into the tax? These are all offseason questions Heat are going to have to answer. But I think for the most part, they're going to be depending on internal improvement from Tyler Hero, from Bam Adebayo, from Max Strus, from Gabe Vincent. A healthier team, maybe Kyle playing more games next season. They miss a lot of time because of personal issues. But I think most of this team will be back unless something unexpected happens and Donovan Mitchell says, I don't want to be in Utah anymore. But as of right now, that's not the case.
Yeah, I do want to talk about the Beal thing probably in the next couple of weeks because that's the name that still makes the most sense.
Yeah, and the only thing that he can control right now, they can't control what Beal wants or what Donovan Mitchell wants. Yeah. They can only control to put themselves in the best position to have an attractive offer if that becomes a realistic scenario for them. And I think, Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, and they can trade 2 first-round picks at this point because of the picks they unlocked in the KZ Pollard trade. Is it I don't know if you could argue if it's the best deal at the Wizards guy. I don't know, but it's not a bad offer.
Not bad at all.
So they'll be in the game if something like that becomes available. Now the other question is, would you trade Tyler Hero for Bradley Beal? That's another conversation that we'll probably have later this offseason.
So do you just have any final Heat thoughts? Any final conference finals thoughts before we pivot over to exit day stuff? Because what you were talking about obviously transitions us pretty nice.
Yeah, I think a guy we haven't talked about that I think, he had his ups and downs in the playoffs, but that was really impressive and I think proved himself as an NBA starter is Max Strus. I think Max, not only shooting the ball, he had a couple good nights from 3, but just defensively, he was really impressive. You look at his advanced metrics in isolation, when teams isolated him, which he defended the most isolations on the team by far because teams kept hunting him. he fared really well. I think up until Game 7, he was allowing like 0.6 something points per possession in isolation situations, which is like among the best in the NBA. Now, it's with the help of a lot of great defenders behind him. But the point is, Max is not some guy you can just go at and try to take advantage of. Like, he holds his own. So I think Max, like, just from the start of the season to playing in Summer League last year to starting the year as a bench player to then becoming a starter on a conference finals team, I think you could argue he was the best story on the roster. And it's just really encouraging for his future with the team. And even more encouraging is he has another minimum deal next season.
I know, it's crazy.
Which is just incredible.
Yeah. One other shout out along those same lines was Victor Oladipo.
Yeah.
Which was you talk about Max Strus is the best story on the team. The fact that Victor Oladipo is on the court in crunch time of an NBA Finals after everything he's been through, or a conference finals, is pretty remarkable too. He's going to be an interesting one this offseason. I think we'll probably talk more about him next week, right? Because he has his bird rights.
Yes.
So they can keep him. But at the same time, I mean, like, if he went somewhere where you could, like, be the guy, like, is someone out there going to be like, we think he is headed back toward a star trajectory? Because I think there were flashes of it at times in these playoffs, but he clearly, I think, loved being in Miami. So it was really cool to see him have that success.
Yeah, Spo kind of praised Victor Oladipo at exit interview day. He made that same point. Just like this guy who really didn't have much practice time, wasn't in the rotation at the end of the regular season, had fallen out of the rotation, wasn't in the rotation to start the playoffs.
Various points in the playoffs, yeah.
He had missed a year, hadn't played many games in like the last 3 years, and then he's just getting his rhythm in like the middle of the conference finals. And he's trying to play 25 minutes a game. Like that's so unique. And that just says, that just shows you kind of how good Victor Oladipo is, that he could even do that and contribute in a situation like that. So, with a full offseason, he hasn't had a full offseason in like 4 years. I mean, who knows what Victor Oladipo can be next year? Yeah. So, I would think, it's going to depend, like you said, on what outside offers he gets, because the Heat aren't going to want to play a huge tax bill, right? But I would think that he will try to keep him, definitely, just because of, his upside. And B, if you sign him to like a $10, $11 million deal, that's tradable. That's an asset.
Yeah.
Victor Oladipo on a 1 year or 2 year deal with a starting salary of like 10 or 11 million, like with his upside, that's a very tradable deal if the Heat need to make a move for a big name guy.
Mm-hmm. All right, you touched on it, the idea that the Heat, you think they're going to bring most of this roster back, and Eric Spoelstra on exit interview day on Tuesday, basically said, like, I want this team to come back. First of all, what did you make of those comments, and how does it compare to the way Spo has talked about other teams he's had at the end of the year? And to me, it just kind of speaks to, like, they do feel like that was a toss-up series. Maybe a couple more guys stay healthy. Obviously, that shot goes in. That's like a 40%, 35% shot or whatever. Like, that shot goes in. Everything's different. But what did you make of the way he talked about this team on Tuesday?
It's not a surprise because this team was really good, very, very good. I mean, they were, like you said, they're one shot away from the NBA Finals. Second, it was a very Eric Spoelstra type team, very elite defensively, a lot of tough guys.
I'd say the couple of complaints people had after the end of the finals were like, what the heck happened to Kyle Lowry, and why, Duncan really couldn't get in. But he had Max Strus, which was Duncan, maybe not as good a shooter as Duncan, but Duncan with defense, basically.
Yeah, right. And then third, the other thing I would say to that is, what is Eric Spoelstra going to say in that situation? Like, no, I want a new team. Like, this team, I didn't like this team at all. Like, give me some new guys.
He seemed pretty strong about it, right? But, you can hem and haw. You can be like, we'll see. It changes every offseason, but I really like this group or whatever. But he was like, these are my guys, right?
Yeah, no, this is a very Eric Spoelstra type team. Obviously a very good team. So yeah, I think it's no surprise that he would want most of these guys back. And again, I think most of them will be back. This core will probably look very similar to last year. I think PJ Tucker, Victor Oladipo, Caleb Martin, those are the biggest questions. I don't know if Markieff Morris will be back. Who else is a free agent? Dwayne Dedmon. It might depend on how comfortable the Heat feel about having Omer Yurtseven kind of step into that backup center role maybe next year. But for the most part, unless, like we said, a unexpected guy becomes available and he'd have enough assets to be in that game, if that does happen, I think this core will be back next season competing for a championship again.
And you think it's the right move?
I do, because I don't know what else. Like, there's if there was a big name free agent out there that you can go after, but I don't know what the other alternative is. Unless Damian Lillard, Donovan Mitchell, one of those guys becomes available, I think it's the best, like their best option at this point.
Yeah,
we said they'll be a contender next year. I don't know if are they good enough to win a title? I think you could. I would say yes, but it doesn't guarantee anything. But all you can ask for is to be in the game, and they'll definitely be on that list of contenders. So. I do think it's the right move.
I'll say we're in an era now. Like the one thing I think people are going to need to like get used to pretty quickly is I don't want to say we're past the super team era because Brooklyn's still out there, but we are past the era where it's the same, where it's 2 teams or 3 teams above everybody else. Unless, like when it happened with the Warriors, they kind of came out of nowhere. So I don't know, maybe like Memphis.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe all of a sudden they become a juggernaut. But like
Dallas.
Yeah, or maybe Dallas gets a superstar next. Like maybe they get Bradley Beal or something, and all of a sudden, like they're the clear team to beat. But we're in an era where going into next year, there's going to be 8 teams.
Yeah.
That can win it all. There's right now, I don't even is Boston the favorite right now, or did Golden State stay the favorite? I haven't looked at the odds for the finals.
For the finals?
Yeah.
Golden State's a slight favorite.
Yeah. So you got Golden State, which is a team that, like, I don't know, does anyone, like, they're not the Warriors of 5 years ago.
No.
Like, their second best player is Andrew Wiggins or Draymond Green, who doesn't really shoot the ball. Like, the second best team in the league is Boston, who Miami just came a shot away from beating. The third best team in the league is either Miami or Dallas or Phoenix. Like, we're in an era where it is going to be totally up for grabs. Obviously, Milwaukee is the other team that probably is in that top 5, top 6. Because again, I think if Middleton's healthy, that we're probably looking at them in the finals right now. And then Brooklyn remains, like I said, the asterisk wild card team.
Yeah.
But like the Heat, if you could get Damian Lillard, like maybe you become the clear favorite. But like if you don't get him, it's not like there's another team that has 3 superstars clumped together. Like you're going to be in this hunt. And sometimes continuity matters. Like look at Golden State. Continuity matters. The reason they are so good is not because Klay is still one of the 15 best players in the league. It's not because Draymond is still one of the 20 best players in the league. It's because those groups, that particularly Steph, if you have him and you have guys who know how to play with him, and you have a group that obviously the top 3 guys have played together for a long time, and then guys like, come on, look like useful role players who have been around for a long time. Like the reason they're great is because of their continuity and because of Steph Curry being one of the 3 best players in the world or whatever.
We could argue that, you and I, but we'll do it maybe later this summer.
But I think the Heat, like, there's a lesson to be learned from that. Like if LeBron stayed with the Heat and they were just like, we're kind of building around the same way that the Warriors did with Steph, like, would he have more rings than he does right now? He might, because that stuff really matters. And we're in an era right now where that stuff matters even more because you're not seeing a Warriors or an
all-time great team. Yeah. And to speak to your point about parity, you could argue that injuries, it's simplistic, but really help decide who's in the finals right now. Like these 2 teams are 2 of the best teams in the NBA, but Golden State played a Memphis team without John Morant, right?
Right.
Dallas beat a team against, a Phoenix Suns team that Chris Paul was obviously not 100%.
I'm not giving any excuse to Chris Paul.
I mean, he was dealing with something. It was like so uncharacteristic of him, those games. And then the Heat, I mean, the Celtics beat the Bucks without Chris Middleton.
And the 2 teams they beat on the way to the finals, both are missing their number 2 scorer.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not discrediting these 2 teams, like, but
the Heat got a couple games without Joel Embiid, like.
Yeah, he got 2 games without Joel Embiid, and Joel Embiid wasn't 100% even when we returned. So yeah, I mean, a lot of it because these teams are so close. It comes down to health at this point of the season.
Yeah.
And Gary Payton the third, is that what he is? Is that okay?
Two.
Yeah, the second. Sorry. I know he's there with an injury and he's missed a lot of playoffs, but for the most part, Golden State's been healthy, and Boston's dealing with their own injuries with Robert Williams and now Marcus Smart. But
their top two guys have been healthy. Yeah,
their top two guys have been healthy, and that's really been the difference, I think.
Yeah, the Mitten is what they call Gary Payton the second.
That's a great nickname. I love it.
Yeah, one of the all-time great nicknames.
Next to Slim Reaper. Slim Reaper's still my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you're always looking for ways to like marginally upgrade, but like you said, unless there's a BL Lillard, a Donovan Mitchell out there, like now you're kind of just shuffling pieces in, and you never know if the guy you replace a guy with is going to be better than the guy you replace. Like, a continuity has a lot of value, and I think Jimmy in a lot of ways. He's obviously an extremely different player than Steph Curry, but in a lot of ways, I think the like way Steph is like kind of a culture unto himself. And I think Jimmy in a lot of ways is too, where like, if you play with Jimmy Butler, it's like hard not to play as hard as him and hard not to like embrace the grind, the defensive identity that he does. In the same way that when you play with Steph Curry, it's hard not to run around off the ball and hard not to want to like try to make the spectacular play. And it's hard not, it's hard to feel like you can't shoot from 35 feet, right? Like they're extremely different, but I think they're that same sort of imposing personality, dominant personality in, again, very different ways that I think building around them and having guys that really fit with them, right? That was the Warriors' problem. A lot of the really last year was Kelly Oubre didn't fit with Steph Curry. You don't want the guys you have around Jimmy Butler right now can pretty much gel with Jimmy Butler. You don't want to take a flyer on a guy and all of a sudden like he can't stand him, because we know that happens with Jimmy sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I look, the Heat made a mistake a few years ago when they let Jay Crowder walk. We talked about it for the entire next season. I think they'll find a way to bring PJ back. I think they'll try to prioritize Victor. They have a draft pick that if they keep could help, add some youth to the roster. And
I can't wait to do our draft preview show.
You're gonna lead that one.
I forgot until like 2 weeks ago that the Heat has a pick.
Yeah, I think they
just kind of assume every year that they don't have a pick.
I think they forgot they have a pick. And they could trade it. I mean, it's eligible to be traded.
Yeah.
So it's not for sure, but yeah, I think it makes sense right now, given all the circumstances and who's available and who's not available, that most of the team returns. Again, I think there'll be in the back end of the roster, there will be changes, maybe with a few new faces as far as veterans, but
Kyle Guy will be like the next Max Strus or something.
Developmental guy, yeah. Hayward Highsmith, right?
Yeah,
maybe
but someone will show up in training camp next year, and all of a sudden we'll be like, "Is this guy going to be in the rotation?"
Right. Is this guy going to be starting in the NBA Finals in a few months? Yeah. But I think my first thought, early offseason thought, is this team is going to pretty much run it back.
Mm-hmm. We'll probably get a better sense of that in the next week or so. Pat Riley will do his end of season availability. We assume at some point here. So we'll come back after. We'll come back next week, definitely after that, and break down. Dive a little bit more into an off-season preview. I do want to talk about the Beal possibility, because that's the one that I can't stop thinking about, because I'm not sure if Washington wants to keep Beal necessarily on that big old contract. So that's the one that's got my eye. But yeah, I'll be really interested to see what Pat Riley has to say about this team. Because, like we said, this was a team that even more than the finals, the team that made the finals, this one feels like it was close. Because I think that Lakers team was very good when you had LeBron and AD. Like, they had the two best players on the court in that series. Like, in this series, the Heat had the best player on the court, I think. And in the finals, they probably would have the second best player on the court. So, like, they feel closer, really, than they have, I think, at any point since the Big Three broke up. And I'll be interested to see what Pat Riley's perspective on that is.
Yeah, and the other difference is it was just sustained success over the regular season too. Like that Heat team in 2020. Not saying it was a fluke, but in the regular season they were the 5 seed. Like, it's kind of surprising that
like
they
the
even
bubble
made that
fluke
run.
thing is like way overplayed at this point, but like there is something to it where they were really well equipped for that, all that kind of stuff. Like,
But this year they were consistent all year, like consistently the best team in the East for most of the season. So I think that plays a role in it too.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any final thoughts on this season?
No.
Got any fun plans?
My 3-week off season before the draft and summer league, and I'm gonna live it up these 3 weeks. It's just incredible. Like when a team goes this far into the playoffs, how short the off season seems.
Yeah, what the draft is like. I think the finals can
June
end
23rd.
Up June 23rd.
Yeah, and then
the draft
free agency starts like June 30th, pretty much.
What's the draft? June
23rd.
Oh, so the finals can finish. I think June 19th would be Game 7, and then June 23rd would be the draft, and then free agency, and then
summer league.
I don't think I'm going to be making it to summer league this year, unfortunately.
You don't want to like be playing blackjack with
Desmond Bain, off-season playoff breakout star. Taught him everything he knows about that elbow jump shot.
Yeah, there you go. That was fun. You should come out just so we can do another episode from a Vegas hotel room.
Yeah, I mean, I had a great time in summer league last year. I got too, I'm that age. I'm 30. I got all those weddings this summer.
Yeah, I get it. It's
a busy time.
That's fair.
Yeah, so you're gonna be spending a lot of time at Club Live over the next 3 weeks until the draft. Is that the plan?
Yeah, I'll only step out of Club Live to do this podcast. That's
it.
And I'm gonna go back right after we're done.
All right. All right. Thanks as always for listening. You can follow Anthony on Twitter at Anthony_Chiang. You got Heat stuff probably still coming over the next few days, I would guess, right? You had something come up today. Or
today. Yeah, I on Wednesday was listen to this Thursday probably, but posted on Wednesday a story just kind of Eric Spoelstra and Max Strus explaining the Heat's 3-point drop off, which I think was.
Yeah, we didn't really talk a lot about that in the opening segment because there were so many other storylines. But just quick, what's the teaser? What happened?
Well, Spo made it seem like it was overplayed, which because he's like, we still came within one shot of the finals, which is true. But if they would have shot just like 33% instead of 30% on threes,
playoffs too, right? It wasn't just the competition.
No, it wasn't. They shot 30. I think they shot 30% in the East Finals, like 31% in the playoffs, and they shot almost 38% in the regular season. Some of that's just guys who were playing, like Victor Oladipo,
right? Like Duncan didn't play
Jimmy.
A lot.
Yeah, and Tyler wasn't playing as much as he did in the regular season. But some of it was also just like Max Strus, Kyle Lowry, Tyler Hero, Gabe Vincent shot a lot worse than they did in the regular season in the playoffs. So it's a combination of the two things. Obviously, better defenses. And Max Strus said that it was just teams were more prepared, obviously, in the playoffs, and they took away different actions and shots that they had become accustomed to. So it was a combination of factors, but it was just pretty. To me, it was just one of the biggest storylines in the playoffs, how they shot basically 8 percentage points worse than from three.
Yeah, I think most teams' 3-point percentage probably dropped in the playoffs, but that was extreme.
But that's a big one. Yeah, it's a big one. And the fact they even went that far, again, when shooting that poorly, says a lot about the defense and Jimmy.
Mm-hmm. Got anything else coming the rest of the week, or just waiting for Riley?
Well, actually, I have a story on Jimmy coming up Thursday, and then I'll have a full roster player-by-player breakdown coming Friday or this weekend, which will probably be about 5,000 words. So look out for that.
Awesome. You can follow me on Twitter at DBWilson2. I'm trying to figure out things to do a little bit now these next few days. I had all my vacation planned for July, like I mentioned. All of a sudden, we got no basketball, we got no hockey. Back doing some Miami podcasts with baseball getting started, I guess. But I'm all over the place these days, but less all over the place than I usually am. So thanks as always for listening. Like we said, we'll be back next week, probably a couple more times, I would guess, in June as we head up to the draft, obviously free agency stuff. Maybe we'll check in on the finals, depending how it goes.
Finals pick before we go.
Golden State in 6.
I say Celtics in 6. We'll see.
I'm the Steph guy, but I have no idea. Like, there's kind of like obviously the salty Heat fans are like Golden State in 5 or whatever coming out of this, but like, I don't know. Golden State, I'm torn on Golden State because the first month of the season they were the best team in the league. I think people kind of forget that before all those injuries they were like awesome. So maybe that's just what they are again. But at the same time, I think the East was way better than the West this year. So
yeah,
I think the gauntlet that Boston went through, obviously, it looked a lot harder for them to get out of the East than it did for Golden State to get out of the West. But I think that's more about the competition that they faced than the quality of their team. But I'm going to still go Golden State because I'm a Steph guy.
Celtics in 6. So we'll talk about this in a few weeks to see who's right.
Exactly. All right. Thanks again for listening, and we will talk to you guys next week.